Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Prime Sports World. I hope everybody had a very good weekend and got to enjoy the NFL draft. I'm David Huffman, of course, right there is Mr. Eric Avila, instructor with me at the Illinois Media School. So we're waiting for TJ. I think he's going to be here a little bit later. But we're going to tag team these NFL grades. We're going to grade every single team's draft, how they did in 2022. If you're looking for consistent content on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, Prime Sports World, pretty good place to be. We go live 6 times a week, bringing the most up-to-date content. Also want to thank our friends over there, Rouge Bear, for sponsoring us here at Prime Sports World. Let your presence be felt. Drop the link of their website to our Facebook page, along with the NFL Supreme Facebook page as well. Hey, Eric, man, you want to introduce yourself a little bit more now that, this is the beginning of the show. So, I know last time we kind of jumped in the middle. If you want to tell me a little bit about yourself, tell about your channel, tell about your podcast, plug yourself, buddy.
Sure. I got you. Yeah, I am 1/3 of the JCA Sports Podcast here. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can follow us on Facebook. It's JONCONAVI. And JCA Sports basically on all the other platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I think we also have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and I think that's at Twitch and YouTube. So, yeah, that's basically what we hit. Talk about Chicago sports as much as we can. We are live every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. So, yeah, after this, I'm hopping on to mine. So, y'all come on over after.
Yeah, so also, if you haven't had a chance to check out their podcast, their show intro is awesome. it is really well put together. It's really well done. Yeah, so if you get a chance, opportunity to check out their podcast after this podcast, go ahead, because it's a pretty good watch. It's really informative, really entertaining. The 3 guys over there do a really good job putting together their content. So continue checking them out. What was that? Facebook, YouTube, and what was it? Twitch? You guys do
Twitch and Twitter. Yeah, we do Twitch as well. Yep.
Very cool. Yeah, but this is Prime Sports World, so let's get into the NFL draft. Before we get into the grades for the individual teams, what would you say as a whole? What were you like? What did you think of the draft as a whole?
You know what? Day one felt like a circus, right? With the trades that happened, that went on, everybody just going all over the place. I felt like day 2 and day 3 was just NFL business. It just felt like a draft day, honestly. I think this year alone, it felt like something off, from the offseason that we had from the NFL. With the trades for the wide receivers, Devontae Adams, and who else got traded on top of that? Tyreek Hill.
I mean, Robert Woods got traded.
Exactly.
AJ Brown got traded during the draft.
Right, exactly. All that, and then, like you just said, AJ Brown getting drafted, Hollywood Brown getting traded, Hollywood Brown getting traded too as well. Like it just felt like day one was just a continuous. And then the ending of a circus, and then day 2 and 3 was just all business.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also, my one takeaway from this is quarterbacks falling big time in this this year's draft. Like normally teams reach for a quarterback. Nah, not this year. Teams were extremely content with letting just quarterbacks just kind of fall into their lap. Like it's the only draft I can ever remember where like one quarterback went in the first round, and I think one went in the first 2 quarterbacks, I think, went in the first 3 rounds. So quarterback, teams were like, they understood that this wasn't the strongest quarterback draft class, and they're like, we're not going to reach for any of these guys. They're not worth it. Like we're going to sit on our hands. We're going to wait till next year where the quarterback class is a lot stronger. Like that's how I'm going to roll with it.
And I felt like this was also kind of like a continuous class of the COVID year class. Like everybody's just said like this draft was deep. And almost every position that you could kind of think of, people that probably would have went in the 3rd round last year, went to the 5th, 6th round this year. So it was just a carry on over from COVID, and a lot of teams got some good depth in their roster.
Totally agree. So let's talk about the first team. You got the Arizona Cardinals. I apologize in advance. I'm going to butcher a bunch of these names. I'm just am. They're some of them are real doozies. So let's talk first about the Arizona Cardinals. So they didn't have a first-round pick because they traded away their first-round pick for Marquise Brown, which in hindsight, now knowing what we know about DeAndre Hopkins, seems like a pretty good decision. Yesterday, like any other time I talked about, I hated trading a first-round pick for Marquise Brown. It made 0 sense whatsoever. He's not a first-round wide receiver talent, like no matter what. They got Trey McBride, tight end, Cameron Thomas, defensive end out of San Diego State, Michael Sanders, Kenyon Ingram, running back, which they needed. Lachita Smith, offensive guard at Virginia Tech. Christian Matthews, quarterback out of Valdosta State. Jesse Luqueta, linebacker out of Penn State. And Marquise Hayes, offensive guard at Oklahoma, reuniting Marquise Hayes with Kyler Murray. Who played together one season at Oklahoma. Just looking at their draft grade, I mean, outside of the Marquise Brown trade, I just don't understand why you give up a first-round pick for a wide receiver that hasn't really proven anything in the National Football League other than spurts here and there. This is probably so the way I grade my drafts, it's like A outstanding, B better than average, C is average, D is terrible, F is just quit your job. Arizona is probably about a C draft for me. I do like the Micah Sanders draft. It gives you a good defensive end out of Cincinnati, kind of a steal where they got him at round 3. And they needed to address running back, and they needed another tight end to complement Zach Ertz. So I guess this is probably about a C draft for me. I just, without knowing that I guess they probably knew that the suspension was coming down the pipes. Trading for Marquise Brown, it's still a C draft for me.
Oh, no, definitely a C draft. The Arizona Cardinals, I felt like they still need a little bit of O-line help. I think they kind of went a little too late with the help on the O-line, even though they had a substantial gap from the pick from 3rd all the way down to 6th from everything that they traded away. You're right. Extra tight end would have helped Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz didn't look like himself coming in from Philadelphia to Arizona when he got traded. Trey
McBride is a good football player.
Yeah, he is a good football player. I think he held, if not, he has the record for most receptions as a tight end in Colorado State, if I'm not mistaken. I might have read that one incorrectly. I'm not trying to get false information here, but he's a decent tight end. He's a blocking tight end. Something that he also needs to as well. He's good at the block. So. Yeah, kudos. C's about right for the Arizona Cardinals. I think the bad taste in my mouth is giving up the first-round draft pick for Hollywood Brown, even with the suspension of DeAndre Hopkins. You're right. It's still not a first-round quality for me trading away for trading to get Marquise Brown.
And then, they basically drafted 2 defensive ends back-to-back in this draft, Cameron Thomas and Micah Sanders. They needed to replace Chandler Jones. You need to throw as many darts as you can. Maybe you can find somebody who works out. Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. Pick number 1, they had Drake London, Arnold Ebiketie, defensive end out of Penn State, Troy Anderson, linebacker out of Montana State, Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati, who says he's going to win a Super Bowl for the Falcons before he leaves. It's pretty big, pretty bold statement. What else do you want the guy to say? I mean, you want him to say he's going to come up there and stick it up? No, you want the guy to say he's going to win a Super Bowl. You got linebacker out of Western Kentucky, Tyler Alliger, running back out of BYU, Justin Schaefer, offensive guard, Georgia, and then John Fitzpatrick, tight end out of Georgia, round 6, compensated pick. Atlanta, so the Drake London thing I think was kind of a reach back to the fact that Garrett Wilson was still on the board. If you're going to go wide receiver, I kind of like going Garrett Wilson over Drake London. But the rest of the draft I actually really like. I loved getting Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round. He wasn't really a value pick taking him in the 1st round where people kind of projected him for, but getting Desmond Ridder in the 3rd round, a guy who can sit behind Marcus Mariota, that's a good fit. I kind of like what Atlanta did here. I'm going to give him a B.
Yeah, I think that's a good draft position. Good grade for the Falcons is a B. The one thing I like about Ridder, he said he's not going to leave until he wins the Super Bowl. He didn't say it was with Atlanta, so technically he's not going to be wrong. So I don't know if I'm going into too much into context, but overall I think the Falcons just hit every pick that they got from Drake London. Obviously, he's going to be a starter. And basically, their first 3 picks. Outside of really looks like have a good opportunity to all become starters and all become really, really good for that team that really needs a facelift. Let's be honest. Atlanta needs a facelift, and I think they did a fantastic job. A B is a good grade for them.
Troy Anderson is going to be a steal at 58, and Arnold Ebiketie, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. I already apologized at the beginning of the show. I'm not going to do it again. But that guy had a 1st-round grade from a lot of people, the experts. To get him at 38, it's kind of a steal. He's got the mold to be a really good edge rusher, and they've been looking for somebody basically since Beasley left, and they haven't really been able to replace him. So I like what Atlanta did here. I think not reaching for the quarterback and waiting for Desmond Ridder to fall into your lap. I think that's pretty good understanding of the draft board and understanding how the draft was panning out. It's a solid B. You could even make the argument might be an A.
Yeah.
And moving on to the Baltimore freaking Ravens, Kyle Hamilton, Tyler Linderbaum, David Njoku, Travis Jones, Daniel Falele, Offensive tackle, Minnesota, Jalen Armour Davis, cornerback out of Alabama. Charlie Kohler, tight end out of Ohio State. Jordan Stout, punter out of Penn State. Isaiah Likely, tight end, Coastal Carolina. Dean Marion Williams, cornerback out of Houston. Tyler Batty, running back out of Missouri. This is an A+. Oh. This is the best draft of the entire weekend. To get Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum, arguably top 10 prospects in this draft at 14 and 25, done. Travis Jones, if Jordan Davis doesn't blow up at the combine, you know who we're talking about at the combine? Travis Jones. Go check out his combine numbers. Insane. At one point, Daniel Falele was rumored to be a first-round pick. To get him at 4 in the 4th round out of Minnesota addresses a major need for this team. David Njoku is not a second-round pick if he doesn't tear his Achilles at his pro day. If you let him sit for one season and play, this is an A+. This is the best draft by far. Even with the punter. Because I don't get it. I don't understand it. But even with the punter, it's an A+. A+.
Hey, punt God for sure. No, I think the Ravens they were gonna get a good grade regardless. Getting that steal for Marquise Hollywood Brown was just everything. They were gonna get a high grade, but for them to get the first round, to get Hamilton, to get Lindenbaum, to get you go on and on and on. Literally, their first 3, possibly even 4 draft picks are all starters. Day 1, week 1.
Daniel Falele will start for them. 5, he is stupid good. Like
that's when you hit your draft perfectly to a T. When your picks and your first 5 picks are all going to be potential starters week 1. So yeah, A++ for the Baltimore Ravens. They got the help that they need to protect Lamar Jackson. They could have probably used maybe another wide receiver in there some way, somehow, but the way how the Ravens go with, I think they're going to go with a 3 tight end set to help out with Mark Andrews. Going to open up the passing lanes a little bit more.
Yeah, they really should have done something at wide receiver, but I mean, the draft is so damn good. It's an A+. This is the best draft by far.
I mean, we could talk about the Ravens all night. How perfect!
I love this draft class. I tell you, Baltimore Ravens regularly from year to year, they continually knock it out of the park when it comes to the draft. To the Buffalo Bills. Ooh, shit, went too far. They didn't even swear there either. So round 1, they got Kyler Elam, cornerback out of Florida. James Cook, running back out of Georgia. That is the brother of Dalvin Cook, actually. Terrell Bernard, linebacker, Baylor. Killer Shaker, wide receiver, Bodie State. Matt Ariziana, punter, San Diego State. Chris Benford, corner out of Villanova. Luke Tenta, offensive tackle out of Vatech. And Balin Spector, linebacker out of Clemson. I'm going to be frank with you. I'm not crazy about this. I don't understand why so many teams felt the need to take punters and kickers during this draft. It makes zero sense whatsoever. But the Kyrie Elam just as a major need. I think that guy was a big-time sleeper. Look for him to be extremely valuable for Buffalo, who try to replace, Levi Wallace in that defense. I've seen some people give the Buffalo Bills a higher, like a C grade, a B grade on this. I think this is probably closer to a C. I think, they James Cook, I don't really understand why they took him in the second round. He's not a second round player. The wide receiver out of Boise State, I also don't love. And the punter, I just think that's pretty head scratching to me when you have other needs that you didn't really address, like offensive line. Like you don't address that until round 6. And your offense is going to be the future of this team. This is a C for me.
100%. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about you when it comes to the Buffalo Bills because although they do need offensive lineman help, everything that they just got out of this draft, running back, they got the need. James Cook, maybe a little too high in the second round pick, but they got that. Right, another offensive guard or two that they needed. They're a little light right there in the offensive, but everything else is just depth. I think the Buffalo Bills just got depth with this draft. There's nothing else. They're a Super Bowl contending team. Everybody's coming back. It's a B. It's a B because you got depth where you need it the most, and you got your starting running back.
You know what? I'm not. You know what? You convinced me. I'm not going to be the hater that I usually am on the show because of the 3 people, we got Kristen, me, Izzy, and TJ. Of the 3 of us or the 4 of us, I'm usually the hater. So, I guess I'll give him a C. All right, I'll give him a B. I'll let you have this one. All right. Moving on now, we got the Carolina Panthers on the looking at their draft. Ike Ekwonu, pick round in the first round. They traded into the third round to get Matt Corral, quarterback out of Ole Miss. Round 4, they took Brandon Smith, linebacker out of Penn State. Amari Barno, linebacker of Tech. Cade Matthews, offensive guard, Tennessee, and Kalen Barnes, cornerback out of Baylor, in the 7th round. Ike Ekwonu, I love that pick. It's really he was the best offensive lineman probably on their board. It's a team that wants to run the football a lot. Ike Ekwonu is the best run blocking tackle in this draft. With the Matt Corral, I kind of think that's sneaky good value in round 3. Not having to take him in the first round. I mean, the team is docked a little bit because they just didn't have enough draft capital. This is a Carolina Panthers team that has holes everywhere, and you want to have as much draft capital as you possibly can if you have holes everywhere. With that being said, I think this is a solid C draft. Ike Ekwonu kind of carries this class.
Yeah, definitely 100%. And you just hit it on the head right there. It's just a team that just did what they could with the draft picks that they got. They literally only had 5-6 picks overall. And you're right. Going from number 6 to after that, you didn't pick all the way to 94 in the draft.
And they had to trade back in. They had to trade into that spot. They didn't have that pick originally.
Exactly. So it's just one of those drafts to a team that even though they have a lot of holes, they did the best they could. So yeah, C sounds about right.
Moving on here, we got the Chicago Bears, our team. Kyler Gordon, cornerback out of Washington. Jaquan Brisker, safety out of Penn State. Velus Jones Jr., wide receiver out of Tennessee. Braxton Jones, offensive tackle out of Southern Utah. Dominique Robinson, linebacker out of Miami, Ohio. Zachary Thomas, offensive tackle, San Diego State. Tristan Ebner, running back out of Baylor. Doug Kramer, center, Illinois. Jatre Carter, offensive guard out of Southern. Elijah Hicks, safety out of California. Trenton Gill, a punter out of NC State. For some reason, every team decided they needed punters and kickers in this draft. I think if you look back, this may be the most punters / kickers ever taken in a draft.
Yep,
by far. For real.
They were.
But yeah, the Kyler Gordon pick, I love. The Jaquan Brisker pick, I love. I'm not crazy about the Velus Jones pick, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. Wild reach. That's just my straight up opinion. That's a wild reach.
All right, I'm not trying to give too much here because I got a lot to say. If you guys tune in a little bit at 9 o'clock for my podcast to hear my full analysis about the Chicago Bears, I will give you my grade. Obviously, I'm the one that's highly more optimistic about my Chicago Bears than the other two on my podcast. My draft grade will probably be the highest one out of all of them. I love what the Bears did coming in with 6 picks and trading and getting 11 out of it. I think that's just perfect from Ryan Poles. So I'm just giving you my grade now. If you want my full analysis, tune in at 9, JCA Sports Podcast on Facebook.
Shameless plug, baby.
Yeah, perfect, right? My draft grade is going to be a B++ for the Chicago Bears. I really like what they did. I really love what Poles did in the back end. The only reason it's not an A is because Ryan Pace screwed him over. Let's just put it like that. If we had a first-round draft pick this year, I think they would probably been.
I'd rather have Justin Fields than a first-round draft pick in this draft. Let me tell you, man.
Yeah, you know what? You're right on that one too. But I'm just saying.
This is a C for me. It's a low C. Velus Jones Jr. can fly, but he's already 26 years old. And then you need to. I understand drafting the corners and the safeties in the first 2 picks, but this is a team that had the worst offensive line in football, and you wait to round 5 to address it. Justin Fields is going to get killed for another season. You didn't address this in free agency. You didn't address this in you don't address it until round 5. And you're not projecting to have starters come out of round 5. Very rarely do you get bona fide starters. I know they did a lot of offensive line stuff later in the draft too, but it's all round 6, round 7. I would have liked seen them take that round 3 pick and pick an offensive lineman instead of Velus Jones Jr., the wide receiver out of Tennessee, especially since this is a real deep wide receiver class. You could have gotten somebody else later. This is a low C for me for the Chicago Bears. Even though I love the Kyler Gordon pick. I love Kyler Gordon. I think he was a steal when they got him.
Yeah, definitely, because they didn't think he was going to reach that far.
Yeah, so. But I don't love this Bears draft class. I just don't.
Tune in at 9.
To the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, tune into now if you want to see Eric's full analysis of the Bears draft class. Cincinnati Bengals, Jackson Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, cornerback out of Nebraska, Zachary Carter, defensive tackle out of Florida, Cordell Volson, offensive tackle, Northern Dakota State, Tyson Anderson, safety out of Toledo, and Jeffrey Gunter, tight end out of Coastal Carolina. My initial reaction, I love Jackson Hill. Getting him at the back end of the first round. He really does give you a lot of scheme versatility. He can play nickel corner. He can play safety. Yeah, he's just a good football player. They addressed their defensive tackle needs now that Larry Ogunjobi is no longer there in the third round. They got another corner to complement because Eli Apple's probably not going to stay, or maybe if he did resign, he's not even all that good. And then they took offensive lineman later in the draft. This is a B for me.
What was the biggest issue last year for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Offensive line.
Yep. And even though they got great value with Jackson Hill in the back end, and actually got a decent player in Cam Taylor-Britt, Joe Burrow was the most hit quarterback in all the NFL last year. And when you just don't acknowledge that all the way up to the fourth round, that's a problem. That's an issue right there.
But in their defense, I mean, they addressed it a bunch in free agency. Like, they basically spent all of their money on that. They made it so they didn't necessarily need it as a draft need.
Regardless, you're still gonna need that depth, because once they go out, if they do go out, because it's NFL, health happens, you're gonna have somebody need to be the backup right there too as well. I think if you would have grabbed another O line or two, or just another O line in general, I think the grade would have been higher. I think this is a C for me.
Okay, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion.
Exactly.
Moving on to the Cleveland Browns, the other Cincinnati team, or the other Ohio team. Sorry, they didn't have a pick until round 3. Matt Emerson, quarterback, Mississippi State. Alex Wright, defensive end, UAB. David Bell, wide receiver out of Purdue, who I love with this kind of value. Round 3. Round 4, Parent Winfrey, defensive tackle, Oklahoma. Round 4, Cade York, the kicker out of LSU. By the way, if you want to have some fun, if you've not seen the kick that Cade York kicks against Florida with the fog, it's like a 57-yard field goal, and you literally can't even see the uprights in the video. That like how he kicked it is beyond me. But Jermaine Ford, running back, Cincinnati. Michael Woods, the second wide receiver at Oklahoma. A lot of Oklahoma players for the team that wants to get rid of an Oklahoma quarterback. Isaiah Thomas, tight defensive end, Oklahoma, and Dawson Deaton, corner out of center out of Texas Tech. I don't grade because I kept to grade them slightly on a curve because they didn't have a first or second round pick because they became Deshaun Watson. With that being said, I just don't love what they did here in the draft. Cornerback wasn't maybe their biggest area of need. I love the David Bell pick, but I'm going to give this a C. I just don't understand why you would take a kicker in the round 4 when you have other needs on your team. It's a C.
Yeah, I agree with you. A C too as well. It's a team that you could find anywhere. You find some holes here and there, and it's just like they filled it up. But you're right, it's not that flashy. I think they were just too excited about seeing Deshaun Watson. This is just a team that just got some depth for all the position that they need, and hopefully they just pan out. So let's go with an average grade for them. Definitely an average draft.
100%. Dallas Cowboys, man. Tyler Smith, offensive tackle out of Tulsa. Sam Williams, offensive linebacker, Ole Miss. Jalen Torbert, wide receiver, South Alabama. Jake Ferguson, tight end, Wisconsin. Matt Wallazo, offensive tackle, North Dakota State. Daron Bland, corner out of Fresno State. Damon Clark, linebacker, LSU. John Ridgway, defensive tackle, Arkansas. Devin Harper, linebacker, Oklahoma State. This is a very low C. I do not like at all the Tyler Smith tick. People who put together big boards and do the top 100 prospects, of the 3 players they took in the first 3 rounds, Jalen Tolbert was the highest rated guy, who they got a steal with on the 88th pick. But Tyler Smith, I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense. He's not at all ready to play in the National Football League. He has penalty problems. He has technique problems. They need to redefine his everything that he is as an offensive line. They need to redo everything about it. It's a C, a really low C.
This draft felt like it wasn't Jerry Jones's draft. I felt like he had no word to what to say, because normally you'll hear a splash or two, especially in the first and the second round. Dallas Cowboys, man. Yeah, you're right. A C, a low C for me. This one just didn't make any sense all across. I don't know what the hell the Cowboys were doing. I guess they try to beef up their defensive because they were going to lose most of their players on the defensive side of the ball, so they filled on that hole. So yeah, super low C, not too exciting.
Moving on to the Denver Broncos, didn't have a first-round pick because of the Russell Wilson trade, but they took Nick Bodina, linebacker out of Oklahoma, Greg Dulcich, tight end UCLA, to pro defense Noah Fant, who's no longer there. Demario Mathis, corner out of Pittsburgh, kind of a steal where they got him.
That was a good one.
Man, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Imora Uwazarinki, defensive end, Ohio State. Turner Yell, safety at Oklahoma. Montrell Washington, wide receiver, Stanford. Luke Wattenberg, center, Washington. Matt Hensberg, defensive tackle, Wisconsin. Fannin Cooks, cornerback out of Wisconsin. I can actually this is a solid C. Nick Bonito should help them right away. Beef up that linebacking core. And I think Demario Mathis is a steal where they got him in round 4. A lot of people had a second or third round grade on him.
I can see why you're the hater in this group, man. Because I believe the Broncos did an exceptional job this draft. They know they needed holes on the defensive side of the ball, and they literally plugged their defensive side with some, with possible week 1 starters. Obviously, with the linebacker and Bonito and Duce right there. Mathis right there at the quarterback position. You already got your starters right there on the defensive side. You got Russell Wilson, man. You gave him a nice, cute little weapon or two. I think offensive line, they needed a little help. They got a little help, but we'll see what they do this half of the offseason after the draft. But the Broncos had a good draft. I give them a solid B, a good B.
I'm gonna stick with my C. Moving on to the Detroit Lions. Aiden Hutchinson, number 2 overall pick. They take Jameson Williams and wide receiver. Josh Pascal, defensive end out of Kentucky. Kirby Joseph, safety out of Illinois. James Mitchell, tight end, Virginia Tech. Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker, Oklahoma State. James Washington, the 5th. Or is it? Yeah, fourth linebacker out of Jackson State, and Chase Lucas, cornerback out of Arizona State. I think getting Aiden Hutchinson, then trading back into the first round and getting Jameson Williams, and basically he goes to a place where he don't have to rush him back and have him play right away because it's going to be Detroit. And also, I kind of like, they moved up 20 slots, but they didn't give up all that much to do it. I think they gave up like an additional second and a fourth, which, as far as draft day trades go, moving up 20 slots, they only give up a second and a fourth. I think that's actually pretty damn good.
Yep.
I'll give this a B. I think, in my honest opinion, though, I think they probably should have stayed pat and drafted, because this is not a team where Jameson Williams is not going to be the cure-all, end-all for the Detroit Lions. They need to boost up this roster with multiple draft picks and trading away future draft capital in order to get one player when you have holes everywhere. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I love the Aiden Hutchinson pick. I love Jameson Williams. I even like Kirby Joseph, the safety out of Illinois. So this is a B for me.
The Detroit Lions had second best draft in our conference. You're right. This is a team that had a lot of holes, needed a lot of holes to plug in. But the players that they got from in return, they literally probably have 4 starters coming in this draft heading into the team this year. And a team it's the Lions. They have low expectations, but it's a good, solid B for the Detroit Lions, that's for sure. It's a good draft for them. A great draft for them.
Yeah.
To the point where I'm flirting with the A-.
Yeah.
I'm flirting with
it. The Green Bay Packers. Quay Walker, inside linebacker, Georgia. Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle, Georgia. Christian Watson, wide receiver, North Dakota State. Sean Ryan, offensive guard, UCLA. Romeo Dobbs, wide receiver, Nevada. Zach Tom, offensive lineman, Wake Forest. Kingsley Ed Negaber, outside linebacker, South Carolina. Tariq Carpenter, linebacker, Georgia Tech. Jonathan Ford, defensive tackle out of Miami. Rasheed Walker, offensive tackle, Penn State. And Samori Toure, wide receiver out of Nebraska. The fact that they didn't address wide receiver until round 2, and they kind of read a little bit on Christian Watson. I'm not totally sold that he's going to be an elite wide receiver, at least not right away. He played in a run-heavy offense where he just wasn't really a focal point of that offense. If you go to Green Bay, you're going to be the focal point of that offense. I love the Sean Ryan pick, the offensive guard out of UCLA. But the first 2 picks on this draft, I just real head scratchers. Quay Walker, inside linebacker, not an area of need whatsoever. You have Devontae Campbell to play inside linebacker. You don't need another. This is a C. And I think I'm being generous.
I think you really are, too, because I think you and I are being really generous. I kind of want to say a D because it's the Packers, and who cares about the Packers? But the Packers went with this draft. They went from a top 10 defense to a top 5 defense. But they didn't get Aaron Rodgers to help. You're right. I think Christian Watson was in the top 5 of most drops of all the wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So that one didn't understand. Even though they went wide receiver, guard, wide receiver, offensive lineman from then on out, it just didn't feel like it filled up the void. This is the one of the teams that should have moved up in the draft to get one of those highly touted wide receivers in the first round. They did it. They should have gone for Deebo Samuel. They did it. It was just a very confusing draft for the Green Bay Packers for sure. They definitely got the lowest grade out of everybody in here. They definitely got a D.
I'm going to stick with my C minus. Yeah, their first 2 picks are real head scratchers. Moving on from the Houston Texans. Round 1, Derek Singler Jr., Kenyon Green, the guard out of Texas A&M, Jalen Petrie, safety out of Baylor, who I love in the second round, John Mechie, the third wide receiver out of Alabama, who unfortunately got hurt, I think, during the SEC title game, and was not able to play in the national championship. John Mechie the third is a really good wide receiver. Christian Harris, linebacker, Alabama, Damian Pierce, running back out of Florida, Thomas Booker, defensive lineman out of Stanford, Tegan, Kunitario, tight end out of Oregon State, Austin DeLucas, offensive lineman, LSU. This is probably a C draft for me. Derek Singler Jr., the cornerback out of LSU, is kind of a reach with the third pick in this year's draft. I completely understand that he wasn't going to be there when they picked again, but just because a player is not going to be there again doesn't mean you have to reach for him. Sometimes you have to be okay with not getting him. And Kenyon Green, the same deal. There were other better players on the board that they could have taken, like Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle out of UNI was there still, University of Northern Iowa. This is a C for me. Jalen Petrie, I love Jalen Petrie. I love the John Mechie. I think they did a better job in day 2 than they did in day 1. So give them a C.
And Lovey we trust, right? I think this is the mantra that we let the Texans have to go. And Lovey we trust. And I think that's an average. It's a very Lovey Smith draft. Let's go with that one. How about that one? Reaching for players too high in the draft and then not really getting good draft value towards the tail end. It's a solid C for me, but you know what? It's the Houston Texans. They have problems all over the place, so they probably may pan out. Probably not. We won't know. We won't know soon. This is a solid C because we just don't know.
Yeah, and I love the Kenyon Green pick but I just don't like him. I don't like him as a player. I love Kenyon Green, but as an understanding of the draft board, I don't love it. Indianapolis Colts, Alec Pierce, wide receiver out of Cincinnati, Julian Woods, tight end, Virginia, Bernard Raymond, offensive tackle, Central Michigan, who's a steal where they got him in round 3. The guy had first round buzz on him. Nick Cross, safety, Maryland, Eric Johnson, defensive tackle, Missouri State, Andrew Ogletree, tight end, Youngstown State, Curtis Brooks, defensive tackle, Cincinnati, Rodney Thomas, the second safety out of Yale. I love Alec Pierce as a wide receiver. I think he gives them a real versatility. He's a really good complement to Michael Pittman Jr. There in Indianapolis. I also like, the fact that they addressed their tight end situation because they didn't really have one because Moelle Cox, I think, is gone now. And the other dude retired. And Bernard Raymond is a steal in the third round. This is a B.
Yeah, a good B. They seen Matt Ryan. They saw the potential. They think they can do it all. And they gave him help. They gave him help in the wide receiver, the tight end position, and they beefed up a little bit up front for him. A solid B for me for the Indianapolis Colts, who I think they're just getting better and better this year, and probably will be the team in the running for the AFC South.
I totally agree with you on that. Jacksonville Jaguars. Trayvon Walker, Devin Lloyd, Luke Forter, offensive lineman, Chad Muma, linebacker, Wyoming, Snoop Connor, running back, Ole Miss, Gregory Jr., defensive back out of, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not going to try. Monterey Brown, quarterback out of Arkansas. This is, for a team that has as many holes as the Jacksonville Jaguars pick, I don't really understand trading back into the first round to get Devin Lloyd. And the fact of the matter is you didn't really address the fact that you need to give Trevor Lawrence. I know they spent a bunch of money in free agency on wide receivers, like way too much money on wide receivers. But to not even draft one in this draft when you have a Laviska Shenault who hasn't panned out, and this is a C. I can't give it anything higher than C. I also don't love Trayvon Walker going first overall. his rise is still head scratching to me. I don't understand. Like all of a sudden, all the scouts were all of a sudden in love with him. This is a C for me.
Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars they don't surprise me. I think every move that they make is just kind of that's why you are where you are. Right, you expected for them to get somewhere any help for Trevor Lawrence. They did it. Um, Offensive line, wide receivers. I mean, they didn't until the third round. They got something. They went defense heavy. Yeah, man. I say a D. I honestly feel like they let this organization down with this draft class this year.
I mean, I don't. You can fit. I'll go D. I'm usually the negative one here, but yeah, I think this is
Yeah,
not a good draft class. I
they
don't understand taking Trayvon Walker. I don't understand taking Devin Lloyd. I do like Chad Muma, the linebacker out of Wyoming, though. He gives them some real nice versatility. But the problem with it is they just spent a bunch of money on free agency on linebacker. They didn't need to address that in
exactly
round third. I just
exactly.
yeah, I don't know. Moving on there, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Brian Cook, safety out of Cincinnati, Leo Chanel, linebacker, Wisconsin, Joshua Williams, cornerback out of Fayetteville State, Denard Kinyard, offensive tackle, Kentucky, Jalen Watson, cornerback, Washington State, Isaiah Ponchio, running back out of Rutgers, and Najee Johnson, safety out of Marshall. This is an A. I love trading
100%.
up. And Trent McDuffie was not going to be sitting there at 29 when they went up back on the board. If you want your corner of the future, especially since Cenarius Ward is gone now, you had to trade up to get him. I love George Karlaftis. I love Sky Moore's value in the second round. This guy, Sky Moore, was flirting with first round potential, falls all the way to the second round. They get him there. He is a perfect complement to what they've signed in free agency. And this is an A draft for me.
100%. I agree with you. The rich keep getting richer with this one, man. And they got to who could possibly be the best cornerback in this draft class in Trent McDuffie. It's out there too as well. They went up there high and get him. They can see that they went defense heavy, man. Obviously, the last 2 minutes of the Buffalo Bills Kansas City Chiefs Buffalo Bills game, they can see that defense was hurting. They addressed that with a lot. They only got one offensive player literally in what majority
The entire,
of their
I mean, they did
the
take,
entire draft. Yep.
I mean, they just take a running back way late, but yeah,
Way late
yeah.
in an offensive lineman.
Mhm.
But defense was a priority for them, and they hit on every single defensive player that they got on here. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely an A for the Kansas City Chiefs. Even though they lost Tyreek Hill, still an A.
To the Las Vegas Raiders, who did not have a pick in the first 2 rounds due to the Devontae Adams trade. Dylan Parham, offensive guard, Memphis. Zamir White, running back out of Georgia. Neil Farrell Jr., defensive tackle out of OSU. Matthew Butler, defensive tackle out of Tennessee. Thayer Munford, offensive tackle, Ohio State. And Britton Brown, running back out of UCLA. I don't really understand why you take 2 running backs when you have Brendan Jacobs or when you have Josh Jacobs on your roster, but whatever. This team, when you don't have a when you don't have a first or second round pick, you kind of need to make sure that you make these picks count. Dylan Parham should be a good player for them. I don't know exactly where they're going to play him on their offensive line. This is a C for me. Without a first or second round pick, it can't be any higher than a C.
You see, David, this is where you're wrong, man. This is where you're really, really wrong on this one because the only reason why they don't have a first and second round draft pick is because they have a very damn good player, Devontae Adams, coming into their team, and they give him a max contract. Their first round pick this year was Devontae. The second round pick this year was Adams. That's why this year, to me, it's a B plus for the Raiders, man. The Raiders did what they needed to do to give Derek Carr his buddy some help on the offensive line. They gave him a number 1 wide receiver to go with Renfro. You're right, questionable pick on getting 2 running backs in this draft. But guess what? They got Devontae Adams.
It's true.
Probably B plus for the Raiders.
All right, for sure enough. Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Moving on, they got Zion Johnson in the first round, offensive guard out of Boston College. JT Woods, safety, Baylor. Isaiah Spiller, running back, Texas A&M. Man, I don't know. Odio Obonya. I think the G is silent. I was listening to something. Defensive tackle, UCLA. Jameer Slayer, guard, Georgia. Giorgio Taylor, cornerback out of Wake Forest. Deontay Lauren, defensive back out of Ole Miss, and Xander Holforth, fullback, Purdue. I love the Zion Johnson pick. I think he really should boost his offensive line. The JT Woods pick is pretty solid too in the third round. And I also like Isaiah Spiller, running back out of Texas A&M. It should give you some versatility that you don't already have with Austin Eckler on your roster. This is a C for me, or a B. I'll give it a B for the Chargers.
All right, there you go. We're on the same page now. B sounds really, really great. They got their holes that they needed. They got the players to fill in the holes too as well. Especially in the first 2 picks, they needed a guard, offensive lineman. On their secondary, you're gonna need secondary help as much as you can, especially with the quarterbacks that they're gonna face this year and the wide receivers that you're gonna face this year.
True.
So yeah, give Chargers. The Chargers did the best that they could with the players that they got from this draft. I give the Chargers a very good grade. It's a solid B for me.
And to the Los Angeles Rams, this will probably be the last one before you got to go and worry about your show. So they also didn't have a first or second round pick. So they used Logan Bruss, offensive guard out of Wisconsin, Jacoby Durant, quarterback out of South Carolina State, Kyron Williams, running back out of Notre Dame, Quentin Lake, safety UCLA, Deron Hendricks, cornerback out of Georgia, Daniel Hardy, linebacker Montana State, Russ Weiss, safety Kansas State, and AJ. Man, Arcoria, offensive tackle, Michigan State. Thank you, Corey. So what do you think about this draft from the Los Angeles Rams?
This is where you kind of give the team a pass, right? It's like, okay, you just give them a C just to like, okay, man, you did your work. You half-assed it. Here you go. Here's a C. You passed. And the only reason why you do that is because they won the Super Bowl. I mean, what else can you do? This team is probably solid from front to back.
I'm going to give them an F for F them picks.
I don't know what to tell you, man. The Rams is a very complicated one because they're the defending champs. They won the Super Bowl. They need some few slots here and there. They picked them out, but they're playing Madden with us because they're just getting everybody off of free agency left and right. So if you just want to, here's a C for passing just because you won the Super Bowl. So
I'm also giving him a C. Jacoby Durant is somebody they can use to cover Darius Williams, who they lost in free agency. I don't love taking another running back when you already have 2 Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson on your roster currently. And they never really did anything to replace Andrew Whitworth. That would probably have been the direction I would have gone with my very first pick in this year's draft, but they chose not to. But yeah, it's a solid C. I mean, the Rams do not care about the draft, and so I'm not going to care about analyzing their draft either.
Hey man, participation award. There you go.
Yeah,
thanks for coming through. Thanks for showing up. That's the one that they got.
Yeah, and I guess I'll have to run through the rest of these draft grades kind of solo because Eric needs to go and get ready for his show. Thank you very much for joining me, man. I really do appreciate it. If you want to do another shameless plug for your show and let people know where they can watch it and how they can continue to follow and check you out, do that now.
Yeah, for sure. JONCONAVI. You can find us on Facebook where we go live every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. on Facebook. We're also on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, all of that, JCA Sports on all the other platforms outside of Facebook. You can always follow us and watch us every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. That's where I'm heading to right now. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys there. Tune in. It's going to be a good one.
And I'll make sure to share your podcast onto the NFL Supreme Facebook page. That Facebook has like 1,000 followers, and people usually go from there, and they usually check us out. So go check out JCA podcast. It's a really good listen, and they're very entertaining, and they're grade A guys. They're stand-up guys in sit-down world.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
I will say, Dave. Yeah, you're welcome, man. Enjoy your show. If you have, maybe I'll pop in later for your show as well. But if you, otherwise, I will see you tomorrow, man.
I will definitely see you tomorrow. It's going to be a great day.
Oh man, it's gonna. I don't even. We'll talk to it later.
We will. All right, Dave. See you. All right.
Brother. Thank you. So yeah, that was Eric Avila from the JCA podcast. To continue, his podcast starts in about 15 minutes. So you don't want to miss that content either. They put a really good show there, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they have a fire ass intro that I would really like to see if I can get one of those created for my podcast because yeah, it's really well done. Let's move on. Let's continue with our draft grades. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins next. Channing Tindall, linebacker out of Georgia. Eric, Zuka Anama, wide receiver out of Texas Tech, linebacker Cameron Good out of California, and Skylar Thompson, cornerback out of Kansas State to give you some depth behind Tua. This draft is a solid C. I love Channing Tindall. He's drafted as a little bit less of a choice because they have no first or second round pick because of the Tyreek Hill trade. I also don't love the kid from Texas Tech. They have a lot of wide receivers already on this team. You could have prioritized other things because this is a team that, you trade away for draft picks. So you have to build your team through this draft here. They had needs at offensive linemen. They had needs at they had for sure had needs an offensive lineman. They chose not to address it. This is a C for me for the Miami Dolphins. And I guess I will consider the fact that they turned their first and second round picks into Tyreek Hill. So that's a pretty solid job right there. But this is a C. Moving on from them, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Lewis Cine, safety, Georgia. Andrew Booth Jr., cornerback out of Clemson. Ed Ingram, guard, LSU. Brian Azamo, linebacker, Oklahoma. Caleb Evans, cornerback out of Missouri. Easy Otatamo, defensive end out of Michigan, Minnesota. Tyler Chandler, running back, North Carolina. Vendarian Lowe, offensive tackle, Illinois. Jalen Naylor, wide receiver, Michigan State. And Nick Muse, tight end out of South Carolina. I love the first two picks for the Minnesota Vikings. Got Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth Jr. Andrew Booth Jr., you can make the argument with real steal in round 2, pick number 42. He gives you some real depth at the cornerback position, and he could turn into be the best corner in this year's draft. He has all the intangibles to be a elite level corner. But with that being said, the rest of their draft was just kind of mediocre. So I'm going to give them a solid C as well. I think their best pick was probably taking Andrew Booth Jr. I think they reached for a little bit on Ed Ingram. They have Wyatt Davis, who they picked last year, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to take another guard in the third round when you have other needs that you need to take care of that you chose not to address. Now to the New England Patriots. Cole Strange, guard, Chattanooga, a 40 prospect reach in most people's big boards. Tyquan Thornton at pick number 50, a 50 prospect stretch for the wide receiver out of Baylor, who's just fast. Marcus Jones, cornerback out of Houston. Jack Jones, cornerback out of Arizona. Both nickel corners. You have a million of those on your roster already. Didn't address anything on the outside. The fact that you lost, J.C. Jackson and Stephon Gilmore. Pierre Strong Jr., running back out of South Dakota State. Paley Zapp, cornerback out of Western Kentucky, because I guess. Kevin Harris, running back, South Carolina. Defensive tackle, Sam Roberts, Northwest Missouri State. Chasen Tynes, offensive lineman, LSU. Andrew Stubert, offensive line, Michigan. This is, in my opinion, this is the worst draft of the weekend. This New England Patriots draft is an F. The pick of Cole Strange was a crazy stretch. The Taquan Taylor thing is just, he can really, really fly. But you guys have wide receivers that can run fast and are streaky fly guys. You didn't really need to take another, especially in the second round when you have other needs. This is an F. I don't understand this pick at all, especially the Bailey Zapp pick. I know he had crazy numbers in college, but those guys never seem to translate to the National Football League. This is an F for me. To the New Orleans Saints. So I got to New Orleans Saints. I got Chris Olave, wide receiver, Ohio State. Trevor Penning, offensive tackle, Northern Iowa. Alante Taylor, safety out of Tennessee. DeMarco Jackson, linebacker, Appalachian State, and Jordan Jackson, defense tackle out of the Air Force. I love the Trevor Penning pick. I also love the fact that the New Orleans Saints didn't try to trade up to try to get a quarterback in this draft class. They understood that this is not the quarterback class to try to reach for the quarterback. They went and they got a wide receiver and they got an offensive lineman. Trevor Penning should be able to replace Armstead, at least maybe, eventually, but he should be able to slot in there and be a starter for you next season. This is a B for me. I love what New Orleans did. I think they did a good job of building this roster, especially since now they've signed Tyrann Mathieu. This is a New Orleans Saints team that went into this free agency period with literally no cap room, and they were able to sign players and make things happen, and they were able to figure out how to get things done. Good job for New Orleans. This is B. To the Giants, Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver out of Kentucky. I don't really understand, based on the fact that you already have a million wide receivers on your roster. Adding another one doesn't really, especially reaching for one, I don't get it. Joshua Izudi, offensive guard, North Carolina. Cordell Float, cornerback out of LSU. Daniel Bellinger, tight end, San Diego State. Dwayne Belton, safety, Iowa. Mika McFadden, linebacker, Indiana. DJ Davidson, defensive tackle, Arizona State. And Marcus McKenton, offensive guard, North Carolina. Darian Beavers, linebacker, Cincinnati. If you had just told me that their first day was all I had to give a graph for, they get an A. But the rest of the draft occurred, and so I have to address the rest of their draft. I wasn't crazy about what they did with the rest of it. This is a B for me. To the New York Jets. With pick number 1, they took Ahmad Sauce Gardner, a quarterback out of Cincinnati. Garrett Wilson was their pick from the Seattle Seahawks in pick number 10. Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, Ohio State. And then they took Jermaine Johnson, the second defensive end out of Florida State. They traded back into the first round in order to get that done. Round 2, they took Bryce Hall, running back at Ohio State. I don't really understand why people thought that they had a need at Ohio State. They had Michael Carter Jr., that was pretty good last season. And they have, Devin Coleman, who's still on the roster, who's still a good player. So I don't really understand that decision at all. Round 3, pick 101, Jeremy Ruckert, tight end, Ohio State. That's fine. I mean, Max, even though they did, they just spent a bunch of money on Ozumoa. Max Mitchell, offensive tackle, Louisiana. Michael Clemens, defensive end, Texas A&M. I love what they did in the first round. I'm not crazy about anything they did basically after that. I feel like they didn't address areas of need at all, and they only spent 1 pick on 1 offensive lineman. I probably would have done even more than that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm going to give this a B based on the fact I love their first round. Philadelphia Eagles. They traded up in the first round to take Jordan Davis. They had to jump the Baltimore Ravens in order to get that done. They took Cameron Jurgens, center out of Nebraska. The other first-round pick became A.J. Brown. Love it, love it, love it. Round 3, they took Nakobe Dean, pick number 83. Injury concerns made him fall in this year's draft, so he should have a chip on his shoulder and should be able to come out with some edge. He's a steal at round 3. He just is. Kyron Johnson, linebacker out of Kansas. And then the tight end, Garrett Calcareta out of SMU. This is an A. I think the Philadelphia Eagles had an A draft. When you draft a wide receiver early in the first round, you hope they turn into A.J. Brown. And so instead of drafting someone hoping to become A.J. Brown, let's just draft A.J. Brown. That's an A. I love Philadelphia's draft. I think they did a great job. For real. To the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kenny Pickett, quarterback, Pittsburgh. Georgia Pickens, wide receiver, Georgia. DeMarvin Leal, defensive end, Texas A&M. Kelvin Austin, the third wide receiver out of Memphis. Connor Hayward, tight end out of Michigan. Fun fact, this is Cameron Hayward's younger brother, so that's fun. Mark Robinson, linebacker, Ole Miss. And then Chris Oladokun, quarterback out of South Dakota State. Kenny Pickett is going to make or break this draft class. If Kenny Pickett ends up being a star, it's an A. If Kenny Pickett ends up being a bust, it's a C. Although I do love George Pickens, also but even though there's some crazy film on him about him, just if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go ahead and Google George Pickens. Just Google him and go to YouTube and see what comes up because he's got some wild game tape. DeMarvin Leal at one point during the pre-draft process before the season started, he had first round grade on him. To get him in round 3, who kind of is a nice scheme fit. It could be kind of a coin flip if he ends up being something really special, or he ends up being a bust. Kelvin Austin, the third, is a good wide receiver out of Memphis. This is a B for me. I think Pittsburgh did a pretty good job. I don't necessarily love the Kenny Pickett pick because I just don't think he's all that good. And I think if you're Pittsburgh, I almost would have waited to see how things go. Especially since, Kenny Pickett was the most pro-ready guy to start, the most quote-unquote pro-ready to play in the National Football League. But he went to a place where he's not going to play right away. And what's the point of drafting Kenny Pickett, whose upside isn't as high as somebody like, Malik Willis and all those other guys. So it's a B. The San Francisco 49ers did not have a first-round pick due to the Trey Lance pick from last year. Drake Jackson, linebacker out of USC. Tyron Davis-Price, running back LSU. Danny Gray, wide receiver SMU. Spencer Burford, offensive tackle UTSA. I think that's University of Texas San Antonio. Sammy Womack, cornerback Toledo. Nick Zalicki, offensive tackle Fordham. Khalil Davis, defensive tackle UCLA, Tarek Castro-Fields, cornerback out of Penn State, and Brock Purdy, cornerback out of Iowa State, is Mr. Irrelevant, who was taken with the very last pick in this round in this year's draft. Danny Gray is a flyer. Can really go. Drake Jackson is a decent linebacker who gives them some depth there. I don't really, Drake Jackson, edge rusher gives you some depth there. Edge rusher. I think this is probably a C draft. When you don't have a first round pick, you kind of have to address your areas of need earlier in this draft. I don't really understand why you would take a running back in round 3. You have $1 million on your roster right now. Doesn't make any sense. So let's stop letting Kyle Shanahan take running backs in this draft. You don't need a running back. You just didn't. This is a team that had other needs, especially at corner, and you don't address it until round 5. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And I know they addressed it in free agency, but this needed to be something they did earlier in this draft because, Kadarius Ward is only one guy. To the Seattle Seahawks. Charles Cross, offensive tackle, Mississippi State. They took Boye Mafe, linebacker, Minnesota. Ken Walker, the second running back out of Mississippi. That's Kenneth Walker, the third running back out of Michigan State. Abraham Lucas, offensive tackle, Washington State. Kobe Bryant, cornerback out of Cincinnati. Tariq Woolen, cornerback out of University of Texas San Antonio. Tyreek Smith, defensive end, Ohio State. Bo Melton, wide receiver, Rutgers. And De'Eric Young, wide receiver, Lenore Ryan. That's the same school as Kyle Duggar went to last year. I don't normally like the Seattle Seahawks drafts, but I do like what they've done here. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas should be able to start at right tackle and left tackle for the foreseeable future for the Seattle Seahawks. Boye Mafe is a very good player, and he fits the prototypical build for somebody you want to be an outside linebacker. I don't really, although it does feel like Chris Carson. I hope this isn't the case, but Chris Carson's probably played his last game in the National Football League. That neck injury is nothing to play around with. And Kenneth Walker, the third, hopefully he does better than the last time Seattle took a running back very early, who didn't really show anything until like last season. This is a B. I think Seattle did a pretty damn good job with their draft. I love the 2 offensive tackles they took. This is the way you build a team if you're gonna do it. Tampa Bay. Logan Hall, defensive tackle, Houston. Luke Godek, offensive tackle, Central Michigan. Rashawn White, running back, Arizona State. Kate Oaten, tight end, Washington. Jake Camadera, punter, Georgia. Zion McCollum, quarterback out of Sam Houston State. Cole Keith, tight end, Minnesota. And Andre Anthony, defensive end, LSU. I think Luke Godet is a very good, is an outstanding pick. He's a former tight end. He can play guard and tackle, whatever you really need him. I don't really understand why they took a running back in the 3rd round. They had better options and more pressing needs, especially since, Leonard Fournette is still on this roster. Probably would have gone in a different direction there. They traded back to pick up extra draft picks. Logan Hall could be a star at defensive tackle. He's a really good football player. I'll give this a B. To the Tennessee Titans, who traded with the Philadelphia Eagles to take Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas, and then they traded their own 1st-round pick to trade back and pick up future assets with the New York Jets, a 2nd and a 3rd. So they got Roger McCreary, quarterback, who had some buzz going in the 1st round, kind of a steal. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer, offensive tackle, Ohio State, who's great value in the 3rd round, and should be somebody who can start for them right away because they never really replaced the dude who went to Cleveland a few years ago. Malik Willis, the 3rd-round pick from the Raiders, going to the quarterback, going to the Tennessee Titans. I love the player-team combination for Malik Willis. You let him sit behind Ryan Tannehill. There's no pressure to start him. And if Ryan Tannehill proves that he's not the guy again next season, you can give the football to Malik Willis and be like, hey, this is your team now. You had buzz of being a 1st-round pick. We took you in the 3rd round. We trusted you. We believed in you. Nobody else did. This is your opportunity to be the starting quarterback. He has all the intangibles to be a great quarterback in the National Football League. Big arm, big body. He can make all the reads. It's just a question if he's going to translate into the pro style system. Hassan Haskins. Who is it? Oh, man, I don't even know. I'm not even going to try. Kyle Phillips, wide receiver, UCLA. Theo Jackson, safety, Tennessee. Chance Campbell, linebacker, Ole Miss. I think if I could just grade them on their day 2 draft with round 2 and round 3, I think this is an A. But the fact that you traded away A.J. Brown to take somebody who could potentially turn into A.J. Brown doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This is a B draft for me. And then last but not least, Washington Commanders, 1st draft as the Commanders. Jahan Dodson, wide receiver, Penn State. Fedarius Mathis, defensive tackle out of Alabama. Brian Robinson Jr., running back out of Alabama. Percy Butler, safety, Louisiana. Sam Howell, cornerback, North Carolina. Cole Turner, tight end, Nevada. Chris Paul, not that Chris Paul, offensive guard, Tulsa. Christian Holmes, cornerback of Oklahoma State. Jahan Dodson is a wild reach for me in this draft. He's a fringe. He's basically a fringe first. He was a fringe first round pick, and you take him at 16 in the middle of the round. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't really seem that you guys understood what you guys needed to do here. They also needed mad help at offensive lineman. They didn't address it until round 7. This is a C draft for me, and I think I'm being generous because I don't like the Brian Johnson Jr. draft pick either. I think they could have done better there. I do like getting Sam Howell in the 5th round. If Carson Wentz, if he's the guy for now, but if Sam Howell has talent to become the starter either next year or the year after, yeah, I kind of like that for the Washington Commanders. But, what do you think about the grade I gave your favorite team? I gave a grade for every single team as we went through the draft process. If you're unhappy with my analysis of your team's draft, let me know. Let me know. Drop into the comment section. I check the comment section on a bunch of different channels or different pages to see what people have to say about the comments that I've made about their teams and about their draft. That's been my full analysis of the 2022 NFL draft. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing winners and losers of the NFL draft. So you did grades today. Tomorrow will be strictly winners and losers. We're gonna tell you the teams that we think nailed it, the teams that need to work, most surprising pick, best pick, worst pick, and what we think is going to happen here in the future going forward. Because this was a really entertaining draft. Like the first day was just wild. Like literally there was like moves constantly. It was like the first day of this draft was one of the more entertaining segments of draft I can ever remember. And also another shameless shout out here, JCA, their podcast is starting right now. So if you want to jump over from my podcast to his podcast, I would greatly appreciate it, and continue giving the love over there to JCA because they do a really good job with their podcast. Also, thank you very much, Eric, for joining us here at Prime Sports World. We needed you to step in, and you delivered for me, so I very much appreciate it. Of course, I've been David Huppman, the host here at Prime Sports World, the executive producer. I create all the graphics. I build all the stuff for the shows. So, okay, tell me what you think about, overall presentation of the show. Do you think there's anything we can do to spice things up and make things a little bit better? I'm always looking for suggestions. Continue to check us out at Facebook at Prime Sports World on Facebook. We are on YouTube at Prime Sports World on YouTube, and then we are PSW_David on the Twitter. So continue checking us out. I'm David Huppman. What we do here, and we bring the heat here at the Prime Sports World. We're going to continue bringing you NFL draft coverage. We're going to continue talking about teams as they get ready for the season. You remember last year we did a season preview for every single team in the National Football League, breaking down their moves in the offseason, their roster, their schedule. You don't want to miss that content. So continue checking us out here at Prime Sports World, because we're going to continue creating great content 5 or 6 times a week. But yeah, that's been my draft grades. Let me know what you think. Y'all have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.